All right, moving away from databases now, we're going to move into the client and database management, desktop management systems. So the overall desktop management architecture is known as the Desktop Management Interface, or DMI. And that was developed, the architecture, the protocols are all proposed by an organization called the DMTF, which is our Desktop Management Task Force. And they are concerned then with the configuration and support of workstation clients, their operating systems, and all the assorted hardware like scanners, printers, etc. that would be related to those desktop systems. So the DMI architecture consists of the service layer. So this is the actual DMI application that resides on each of the desktop devices that are going to be managed. The DMI service layer does the actual processing of the desktop management information on the clients. So again, we're talking about like the AMS or the MIBs. And okay, then they have two APIs. The interface that interacts with the DMI is basically consisting of two APIs. One is the Management Interface API. That's designed to interface with the desktop management program. That's going to actually collect all the information from the client. And the Component Interface API, which is designed to interface with the individual application programs or desktop components themselves. Information about that, all of these components, these desktop components then, is stored in and stored locally. Notice that I accentuated that here. So in other words, stored on the desktop itself in what is called an MIF, or a Management Information Format. And then that MIF is what the agents are going to read and pull over and send to the actual management console itself. So it's interesting that you want to take note that we have the MIF in the desktop world. The Management Information Format. And that's the same as the management information base that we just talked about briefly there in the enterprise database application environment. So right away you see that we have two different schemas essentially that have been developed. One being the MIF for desktops, one being the MIBs for our enterprise applications. And a little bit later on we'll talk about a MIF to MIB mapper, which is a translation then between the two so that we can kind of get our systems all working together with each other. But right now we're focused on the desktop arena, not the application arena, which is more server-based, and database arena, which is more server-based. So this is the graphic about the elements that we just talked about there. So here is our DMS client down here, running whatever various desktop services, running whatever various desktop applications. Here's that component interface. Remember, the component interface API interacts with the desktop components and then the DMI services layer. And then up here we have the management API, which deals with the management system, which is represented up here. And again, locally on the client, all of the statistics that we're pulling from the services and the applications running on that desktop are being stored in the management information format on that desktop. So the desktop management system then includes network transport protocols, things like SNMP, might use RPCs, remote procedure calls, to actually retrieve the information from the desktop system. And then you can contrast the desktop management system to an enterprise network management system, which is what we briefly looked at a moment ago, which dealt with the large high-end applications and databases. And they're using pretty much IP as their transport protocol and SNMP as the encapsulation at the application layer. And then, as I say, if we want to be able to communicate, or I should say store the desktop information on an enterprise management system, we need to have a special component called a MIF to MIB mapper. So that essentially translates the format that the desktop database is created in, takes that data and then just translates it into the format where the enterprise system uses, which is the MIB system. We're going to take a look now at some of the technology that's involved in desktop management. So this technology comes from various vendors. It can best be described as a suite. So when we talk about suites, we're talking about multiple components. So a suite of associated desktop management applications. They would include things like hardware and software inventory. So we want to keep track of every single computer in here. What operating system is it running? What CPU does it have? How much RAM does it have? What size hard disk does it have? All those things are what we want to inventory about our systems. Asset management, we want to keep track of all of the assets that we have within our network, all the actual physical hardware that we have within that network. Software distribution, we want to say all of the employees of the company, we want to upgrade their computers with Word. We just got licenses to go from Word 2003 to 2007. I don't want to have a tech go around with a disk, a CD, and have to manually upgrade them. I'm certainly not going to expect the employee to do the upgrade. That'd probably be the worst thing I could possibly do. So instead, we've got systems that actually can, over our network, do the install of the application for us. License metering, especially in large organizations, you have to be careful about people who are sometimes installing their own products without a license, or that we don't have more people using a product than we have licenses for, because that's illegal. And in large companies, which are dealing with millions and maybe billions of dollars, they would much rather be legal than to try and cut a couple of corners, because if they cut a couple of corners, they're going to be out of business real quick. So license metering is a big aspect of that. Server monitoring, we want to make sure that the servers are running efficiently, that the hard drives aren't filling up. Virus protection certainly is a big issue. And then help desk support, being able to deal with issues that crop up on a user basis. If you look in your book on pages 438 and 439, we have some additional DMI functional categories for you. There's like 2 pages of items there, starting on page 438, continuing through on 439. So I'm not going to go through those individually here in class. We just don't have time for that. But make a note to yourself that you do want to go through those lists, those 2 pages. Be just familiar at the level they present them there in the book.